My interest in Nintendo during 1996 continued to fade until I heard the news that the N64 would be released in September. My subscription to Nintendo Power had expired, so I don't even remember how I heard about it. More amazing was the relatively short time span between when I first heard of its release, decided I was going to get it, and finally did get it on launch day. I still have the desktop wallpaper I made of the N64 logo in Microsoft Paint that I made a few days prior to the system's release. In hindsight, it was an incredible feat to secure the console on release day, as it was available in extremely limited quantities. I didn't even know what I was up against at the time. I had never been a doorbuster, and I didn't know of the system's limited availability. I did, however, know that I would have to get up early that Sunday morning. I was so excited, though, that it was more a matter of staying up rather than getting up. I didn't sleep very well that night. Regardless, I was first or second in line at Target bright and early that sunny autumn morning. I got in, got my console and copy of Super Mario 64, and got out in less than 10 minutes. My mom was hosting a dinner for the neighbors at our house that night, and I was having friends over. I was pumped that we were going to be able to play Super Mario 64. Everyone thought it was awesome. One of my friends even got his hands on an N64 and Super Mario 64 within the next week or so. He was determined to get all 120 Power Stars. I took a more relaxed approach, as usual, and played the game casually until I got bored or frustrated. I was happy just running around the castle grounds. The play control was so liberating, and the moves you could pull off with such minimal effort were impressive. I didn't know it at the time, but Super Mario 64 would eventually become my favorite game of all time. I played Super Mario 64 on and off through the autumn and winter months of 1996, until it was joined by my next N64 game, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I received this game as another early birthday gift. I can remember going to Babbage's at the mall on the scheduled release day, only to be told it wasn't yet available. Oh, the days without internet updates. I relied on magazines such as Next Generation for game news and reviews. Oddly enough, it was that magazine that would play a large part in my decision to eventually abandon the N64. As per usual, a group of friends spent the night for my 17th birthday celebration. This time, however, we would be camping out up in my room instead of down in the basement. The bed was stowed, TVs were brought in, and Taco Bell was ordered. Friends brought their consoles, and we set up various game stations. Given their 4-player feature, I thought Wave Race 64 and Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey would be good titles to rent for the occasion. The party was a hit, and by the end of the year, Killer Instinct Gold for Christmas, as well as rain checks for 3 additional black N64 controllers, would be added to the collection. I would also purchase the controller pack from KB Toys with my own money. 1997 for the N64 was much like 1993 for the Super NES. Very few quality games were produced, and those that were of substance were available near the beginning of the year. Wave Race 64 was technically released in 1996, but it wasn't easily available until later in 1997. I snagged my copy from a very high shelf behind the counter at Funcoland for the hefty price of $100. Talk about supply and demand. After renting it for my birthday party, it haunted my subconscious, and it was just one of those titles I knew I had to have. Along with Super Mario 64, it remains one of my most favorite titles of all time. In addition to the ones I play, I have a sealed copy of these two games as well as Killer Instinct Gold. Other titles I purchased early on in 1997 were Mario Kart 64 and Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Both of these were among the few outstanding games available at the time on the N64. As winter melted into spring and spring warmed to summer, I played my games and continued to read Next Generation magazine. Unlike Nintendo Power, whose subscription I did not renew upon acquiring the N64, this was a non-biased magazine that told things like they were. The writers gratuitously praised the N64 for its successes, such as Super Mario 64 and Wave Race 64, but were also quick to criticize its faults. The most notable of these were its lack of games. I remember reading the huge 1996 year-end bonus issue, which I still have, over and over again. It pitted the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and N64 against each other in an article titled The Big Fight. I love the article because it detailed each system's specifications, library of current and future games, and showed cool photos of their internals. The writers of the article awarded the N64 4 stars and labeled it very likely to succeed. This prognosis would soon turn negative as complaints of the old-fashioned cartridges and lack of quality games continued to mount. I reluctantly began to agree with the criticism as I too noticed the poor sound quality and play control of a lot of third-party games. I also preferred Super Mario Kart on the Super NES to Mario Kart 64. Well, if I preferred what I already had on the Super NES, why continue on with the N64? It wasn't until I received the May 1997 issue of Next Generation magazine that I seriously began to question the console. On the cover of that issue, it boldly stated, "There's something wrong with Nintendo 64." The last game I purchased for the N64 was Mace: The Dark Age in late summer, early fall of 1997. I always had a fondness for fighting games thanks to Street Fighter II. My friends were all playing Tekken 2 on PlayStation. Since I couldn't own Tekken, and the pictures I saw in Next Generation of Mace were absolutely gorgeous, it seemed like a good choice. Actually, it was really one of the only choices as far as fighters went on the N64. But like other N64 games, especially the third-party ones, the problems were clunky controls and mediocre music. That was about it for me with the N64. Ironically, it was also around this time that I bought a PlayStation. As a lot of my friends already had it, this purchase was purely the result of boredom and peer influence. I did enjoy Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo and what I played of Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Final Fantasy VII, but the PlayStation entertained me far less than the N64, especially compared to my adventures with Super Mario 64. There were not any games I wanted for my birthday or Christmas for 1997, and my interest in the N64 slowed to a trickle. In the meantime, I continued to maintain my music collection. For my birthday, I added a Sony mini-disc player to the stereo system. Christmas, strangely enough, would yield 3 Super NES games: Killer Instinct, F-Zero, and Tetris and Dr. Mario. The last 2 were Player's Choice reissues that I would upgrade to the originals sometime later. Super NES games were on clearance at Best Buy at the time, and I was feeling retro, so I put them on my list. Had I known how valuable of a collector's piece Earthbound would become, I also would have bought every single copy that they had marked down to $25. Oh, the benefits of hindsight. By late December 1997, my lack of interest in gaming and the negative hype on the N64 from Next Generation magazine led me to sell my N64 and games to a friend who expressed an interest in them.